So just like the pH scale, there's a pOH scale as well. And pH stands for the power of hydrogen. And that's why we're using exponents with this, the power of hydrogen, how strong the hydrogen is. And so the pH scale is just looking at the power of OH minus. So it's really the opposite of this. So in the pH scale, 1 is an acid, right? pH scale, 1's an acid. If we were looking at the pOH scale, 1 would be a base. All right, so it literally flips it around. Now, we're not going to look at the scale from that perspective, though, because that can make things really confusing. What we're going to use it for is these two equations, because sometimes we need to figure out what pOH is, and using these equations might make it a little bit easier for us. So we're just adding 2 more equations to what we already have. The 2 equations that we have are pH equals negative log of H plus, and then the Kw one. Now we're adding pOH equals negative log of OH minus, which is pretty similar. All right, makes sense. And then we have pH plus pOH equals 14. Now this one's really useful because if they tell you that the pOH of something is, I don't know, 8, you can use this equation to figure out what pH is. It's just a subtraction, all right? So it'll speed things up. So these are our 2 new equations, this one and this one here. What this is showing you is just that you can use these to figure out, the other thing. So if you know pH, you can figure out pOH. If you know the opposite, you can figure out the opposite, all right? So that's what we have going on with the pOH scale. So 2 new equations, and that's it. That's it for the chapter. We do have these 4 equations and just have to know how to use them to solve some problems. Okay, so these are slightly more complicated, but honestly, we've already done a few of these, so you should be pretty good. It says, what is the pH of a solution if the OH minus is this? All right, we're gonna set this up first, and then I'm gonna ask you guys to solve it. So we need to know what equation should we use first. All right, first thing we're gonna do is write down our equations. So we know we have a pH equation. We know we have Kw. We know we have the pOH equation. And we know we have pH plus pOH equals 14. So we have these 4 equations. Which one do you want to start with? Now here's a cool thing before I answer that question. You can actually do all of these problems 2 different ways, all right? So what I'm going to be checking for is that you're showing me what equation you want to use, you're substituting your numbers, and then you're giving me an answer, all right? How you get to that answer is completely up to you, all right? So what do you want to do first? We know OH minus. Which equation do you want to start with? Okay, cool. So we have OH minus, which is in this equation, and that'll give us pOH. Perfect, right? We can do that. So we're going to use that first. pOH equals negative log of OH minus. Once we use this, we'll have pOH. So then how do we go from pOH to pH? What equation would we then use, Kara? Yeah, the pH, well, there's 2 pHs though, right? Which one do you want to use? You know what? We don't have to use that one. What we can actually do is we can go right from pH to pOH, because we'll know this one, right, from here. So then it's just a subtraction problem, all right? All right, let me give you guys a couple minutes to give this a try. All right, so let's plug this in. We have OH minus, so we have this one. pOH equals negative log 4.0 times 10 to the negative 11. Let's plug that in and see what we get. We get pOH equals 10.0
3979.
Okay, did you guys get something like that? Now, if you're still in scientific notation mode, you might have gotten 1.03 times 10 to the first. All right, so did you get something like that? Okay, cool. All right, so as much as we love to use scientific notation when we're doing H plus and OH minus, when you have it in POH or pH, you really should take it out of scientific notation just because that's kind of the norm for it, all right? And especially when you're trying to figure out sig figs, because the decimal point is a little different when it's in scientific notation, and that'll affect your answer. Okay, so we have two sig figs here. So the POH is going to be 10 point, all right, two sig figs, so the 3.9, but the 9 gets bumped up. So it's going to be 10.40 is our POH. Okay, now, we're trying to figure out pH, which is why we wanted to use this equation here. So we're going to do substitution. We don't know pH. We know POH is 10.40 equals 14. All right, so if we subtract 10.40 on both sides, that's going to give us pH equals, and so we do 14 minus 10.40, which gives us 3.6. Now sig figs again, all right, so with sig figs, we need to make sure that we're using, we're subtracting here, so it's decimal places. And this 14 is a constant, so it has unlimited sig figs. So we're gonna go with the same number of decimal places there as well. So it'll be 3.60 for the pH. Is that what you guys got? Yeah, all right, cool. Good.